Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of HSP TV. I am your host, Barbara, and today I am joined by the lovely Bonnie Casamassima. And we will be talking about how to use your intuition, how to tune into your intuition to support your everyday life. Because most of us have this huge gift, our intuition, and we either are not aware of it or we haven't learned how to use it. And Bonnie did a lot of research into this topic. So I've been looking forward to talking about it because it's so important that we learn to reconnect with this beautiful gift that we have and learn to use it to make our lives better in everyday life. So thank you, Bonnie, for agreeing to come on the show and talking about this topic.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. It's so great being here. Thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome. So, how did you get into the research of this part?
Yeah. My background, I worked in the corporate world, and then I worked as a professor of research within working primarily with graduate students. So I was always, or I had experience in that realm. That's kind of the world I lived in. And then the intuition piece came a little bit later after my own intuitive awakening experience to tie it all together.
I love it. And why intuition specifically? Because it's very specific.
Very specific. Yeah. And I think for me, it was part of my own personal journey. So I know we can kind of get into some details a little bit later, but I had my own intuitive awakening, and I've always been very empathic. As a professor, I would be able to really, feel the different students in the room. Okay, the student in the back right corner needs a little bit more of this. The student in the front
Hmm.
left corner needs a little bit more of this. And that served me really well. And I think just because that was my lived experience, I just assumed that's what everybody felt, right?
All right, nice.
And yeah. And then kind of along the journey, I started meditating for stress reduction because
Hmm.
I was working way too many hours. I loved what I did. I loved the students I got to work with. I worked primarily with graduate students on their research projects and teaching them the research process. And long story short, one day in meditation, started receiving really clear visuals in my mind's eye. It was almost like a movie screen on my mind's eye. Like I'm dreaming, but I'm awake, if that makes
Hmm.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure many people listening will probably have similar experiences, or, our intuition comes in so many different ways. But
Hmm.
that led me on a journey of personal discovery first, really tuning in. What is this? At the time, it scared the crap out of me.
Happening. Yeah.
Yeah. But about 7 years in or so, I said, you know what? I've got research. And, am I a research professor or am I an intuitive medium? And I was
Hmm.
really at this crossroads, or so I thought I needed to be. And a
Hmm.
good friend of mine said, Bonnie, like, why not both? Why not
Hmm.
research on intuition? You have your experience and some people in your community, but what might it be like to apply the research process to interviewing other people from around the world on their journey connecting with their intuition? So that's a little bit of kind of the how or the journey of blending the two.
That is so beautiful. And some of you probably will recognize the visual part, but other people might not recognize it. I've never been with the visual images, but to me, the universe talks with songs. I would
Hmm.
hear songs in my head or would get intuitive downloads, messages or about a book that I'm writing or a program that I'm creating or things like that. So it can look different for many people the way you're intuitively receiving the messages. It doesn't always have to be visual or auditory. It can also be in many different layers. You probably
Absolutely.
also discovered that in your research, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It comes in many forms. We saw it through all of our senses. We saw it in vivid dreams, gut reactions. I think a human way to explain this or share it is when we talk about intuition, have you ever felt that feeling the first time you meet someone and you can't explain why, but you're just so drawn to them? Like, I just need to be near you and I just love being around you. Like, has that ever happened? Yeah. Yeah,
The
me
other way
too.
around, you meet
Yeah.
someone and you think, oh God, no.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So you kind of have, maybe it's a gut feeling, maybe it's like, oh, a thought, or your body kind of tenses up. So then you just go ahead and date that person for a few years anyway, just to figure out if your intuition was right.
Yes.
Yeah, that is a way that we can think about intuition. And I feel most people, myself included, have had these experiences. And so we all, I believe, very strongly, and the research also shared that people are incredibly intuitive, or we have this within us.
Hmm.
Should we choose to connect with it and deepen it, often in societies that maybe we've been taught to disconnect from it,
Hmm.
it can be quite the journey. And but it can be really powerful, like you were talking about, downloads coming through with a book that you're to write, or a course that you're creating, or how can I make this decision for this job or that job. It
Yes,
comes in many, many ways. Yeah.
exactly. And did your research also show why so many people are cut off from their intuition?
A lot. It was interesting. So I want to do a pause here and a shout out to a person that I hired to help with the research analysis. So she and I separated. We did the research analysis separately. Then we came back together just to try to have as much quality control as possible.
Mhm.
Celeste Page Sample. She's awesome. She's a rock star. So I wanted to share the team involved in it. I led the project, and
Mhm.
it's wonderful to be here talking about it, and it's a beautiful team. Yeah.
Awesome.
In your question, yeah, what happened when people weren't connected with their intuition?
Or more, why are people disconnected from their intuition?
Yeah. Yeah. A wide range of reasons. We saw it in two macro categories. One being societal pressure.
Hmm.
And so that is, and then the other one being internal disbelief or lack of self trust.
Hmm.
When people were able to share their experiences, their abilities, their synchronicities, their gut feelings, their vivid dreams, right, their visions or auditory downloads in conversation with community, that was incredibly powerful for helping them establish that external validation.
Yeah.
And then equally as important was having that internal self-trust. So
Mhm.
most often when people were disconnected from their abilities, or maybe they had, numbed themselves, be it, recreational activities or workaholism, right? You name it. There's a lot of ways to kind of shut off. It often correlated with a lessened sense of self trust. So, as people started tuning in, trusting themselves more, they saw an increase in their intuitive connection as well.
Yes. Yeah, I can attest to that. When I was younger, I have the gift of knowing. So
Yeah.
I knew things with absolute certainty and absolute clarity, and it scared the peep out of my environment.
Yeah.
And then people told me, "Oh, don't be like this," or "Don't be this scary," or "Oh, stop it," right? And other things like that. And then you made to feel that this is not something that you need to be proud of, that it's something that you should hide away or not acknowledge. And you start to disassociate or distance yourself
Mhm.
from this part within yourself. And as an empath or a highly sensitive person, you often get told, oh, but you're far too sensitive, and you take things far too personal, and you need to let things go or grow a thicker skin. And all of these things combined often make us feel like we are not okay the way we are, and then we start distancing ourselves from who we actually are, trying to fit in with society, trying to be who everybody else wants us to be, or at least what we think other people want us to be, or what they actually tell us they want us to be. And with that, I think we move further and further away from our true nature, which
Mm,
includes this gift, among others,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And that's definitely what the research showed as well, is as people started a journey of, their self-healing, their self-empowerment, their self-growth, tuning in to themselves, those whispers inside, the more that they went on their expansion journey and healing journey, there was a direct correlation. And again, correlation isn't causation, but it happened over and over and over again in the research. So we want to acknowledge it, that their intuitive abilities started to come online more fully, started to become clearer. And it was really this ongoing process of almost building that muscle or trusting ourselves, showing up and trusting it again. It's almost like going to the
Mhm.
intuition gym. I like to explain it.
I love
Um,
that because that's
yeah.
indeed the next part, right? Because then you start open up to the possibilities of who you are and your gifts and your talents. And then you discover that all empaths and all highly sensitive people have this sixth sense, this deep intuitive knowing. But then it's like, what is it telling me? Is it a
Hmm.
yes or is it a no? How do I recognize if it's a yes or is it a no? Or
Hmm.
how do I even know that it's talking to me? Is it not in my mind? Am I not going crazy?
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm curious for you. I mean, you're talking about how you use your intuition in your everyday life and work. What are some things that are beneficial for you with that, of really that discernment of, is this my internal wisdom, my intuitive knowing, or is this my like egoic mind wanting it to be this answer?
That is a very good question. And I think the difference becomes clearer over time. The more you work with it, the more you practice with it. I've now discovered methods for myself that I know without having to second guess myself that it comes from a power without outside of myself and that
Mm,
it doesn't come from ego. It's, I think, inherent to doing the work. The more inner work you do, the more you heal, the more you connect to your true self, the stronger your intuitive compass becomes. And when I was still in the learning to trust phase,
yeah.
I did exercises with myself. For
Mm,
instance, we have this really beautiful nature area not that far from my house, and I've always longed to go there. They call it the Purple Hills of Holland. In
oh,
August and September, the heather, or sometimes it's called Erica, was blooming purple, and then all the hills are purple, and it's
oh
so
my
gorgeous.
gosh. Oh my
But
gosh.
I never went there because I thought, I don't know the area. I'm going to get lost, right? I will never find my way back again because it started to look similar to each other, and I was scared. I let myself
Mm,
be held back by fear.
yeah, yeah.
My exercises were then that, for instance, I had an app on my phone. In my case, it was called Sports Tracker, but any tracking app that tracks your route will do. And I
Mm,
just parked my car somewhere, turned on the app so that I knew where my car was.
yeah.
And then I started walking. And every intersection, I would stop, I would ground myself, I would close my eyes, and I would face a direction and then think, okay, if I'm walking this path, how is that making me feel? With my
Mm,
eyes closed, and then thinking, oh, ooh, this feels a little right? And then
mhm,
I would do that for every choice, and then I would choose the one that felt the best. That is
mhm.
already tuning into your intuition, tuning into the signals of your body that is guiding you. And I would do that for as long as I was in the mood.
Yeah.
And then eventually you needed to go back to the car, right? And especially in the beginning, I had no clue where I was.
Yep.
And then I asked myself, if I had to guess right now where the car would be, what would be my guess? And I
Oh.
thought, well, if I had to guess, I cannot explain why, but I think I would need to go in that direction.
Mhm.
And then I would take the app and I would look at the dot that signified where I was right now and the dot that was my car. And indeed, I had to go in that direction.
Yep.
So the first time that happened, I was pleasantly surprised. I thought, oh, ooh, right?
Yeah, what a neat
Hmm.
thing. Yep.
And the more that happened, the more I started trusting in my gut feeling because every time I thought, oh, I need to go there, or I need to go there, or I need to go there, or whatever, when I checked with the app, it was always right.
Yeah.
So eventually, you are not second guessing yourself anymore because you have that experience that when you trust in your gut and then you check it with something that's infallible and it proves that you were right, you stop checking it because then you start trusting in it and you think, well, if my gut tells me I have to go that way, I have to go that way.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Oh my goodness. And what a real world example of how you're building that muscle. I'm curious, as you were doing practices like that where you were going and saying, okay, what is my body? What's my intuition? What is my gut feeling? What are my like, intuitive knowings, my clear cognizant, etc. Um, how I'm curious, like, did you start to use that more fully, say, with your work, for example? And if so, like, could you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, of course. And
Yeah.
so it started with that, and then you start relying more and more on your feelings. You're also starting to recognize the signals within your body that tell you that you are having an intuitive hunch, or that tell you, oh, this is it not feeling really well, and you're starting to recognize this signal so that you know not to go there or not to make this choice. And then you start, or I started to apply it to choices. For
Mm.
instance, am I going to hire this coach to coach me? Am I going to work with this person, or am I going to invest in this program? And
Right.
or am I going to buy this software? Or and these are of course business type of examples, but you can also do it on personal questions like, is this my house? Is this the place that I'm going to buy, that I'm going to be living in? Or is this my romantic partner? Or with the friend, right? I met the best friend of one of my really good friends. And the first time I met her, I thought, oh, right? But in my mind, I thought, well, don't be ridiculous, right? You don't know this person. She is the best friend of someone who is a really, really good friend of yours. So how bad can she be?
Right.
So I convinced myself to not trust in this signal, and I decided to go out. Three of us, we went to a bar drinking something, and then we went dancing. And what happened was that she apparently felt so threatened in her friendship because I was there, that she started to actively be nasty to me, but always when our mutual friend was not in earsight or was not noticing it. And that sort of fortified the feeling that I had, that I thought, oh, I cannot pinpoint it, I cannot name it, but there's something about you that I thought, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
And you
absolutely.
start trusting in your talks more, but still, especially when it came to important business decisions or life decisions, in the beginning I was still hesitant. And then I would start talking to the universe and say, okay, well, this is what I'm meant to do, then I want a sign that I cannot refute. That is so incredibly clear that, it's like in your face. This is what you need to do. So if I am meant to do something, before I am home, I was in the city, for instance, and I was walking home. Before I reach my home, I want to see something that's incredibly yellow. And if
Hmm.
I'm not supposed to do this, I want to see something that's incredibly red.
Hmm.
So I was walking, and then a bus passed me by, and it put on the brakes, and it was completely red lights, but then also with a shockingly yellow color of the bus itself. And I thought, this is not a clear answer, universe. I asked for incredibly red or incredibly yellow and not
Yeah.
both. This is
Hmm.
still not helping. So I started negotiating with the universe to give me better signs to help me
I
with
need
my
more
with
clarity, please. Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
Yes. And
absolutely.
in the end, it's a muscle. It's something, like you said, you need to build, that you need to practice with. And the more you use it, the more in tune you get to it, the more in tune you get to your own body, to the signals, and to your inner knowing.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're talking about pulling it into your daily practices or regular practices. And that's something that came through is the way in which people built their intuitive muscle, their intuitive abilities. They went to that intuitive gym, very much came through as a daily-ish. We're humans, right? But a
Mhm.
daily-ish practice, a meditative practice. And what's really important here is that meditation comes in so many different forms. And I
Yes.
really encourage us to look at it through the definition of what are the activities, the initiatives that you're doing that help you to allow yourself to focus, be still, and be present with your experience in that moment. So we can certainly sit crisscross applesauce, listen to a guided meditation, and try to still our minds. That's a beautiful way, a really powerful way. But
Mhm.
we can also go on walks in nature. We can garden in our backyard. We can dance and move however our body wants to move. We can paint and let the paint move through our paintbrush, right? We can do a business plan and allow that information to just flow through us. We can automatic write where we're sitting at a computer and we're just typing until the words move through us. It works with pen and paper as well. So lots and lots of different ways to go to the intuition gym, right? But
Mhm.
meditation and a daily-ish practice did come through as really powerful for that because it helped us to recenter back into that inner knowing, that inner connection.
Mhm.
And our muscle has been built so far in the other direction. A lot of times, that lack of trust or that lack of listening, that inner knowing, that it does help to start to swing the pendulum in the other direction with it. It's really
Yes.
powerful. Yeah.
And I love that you're sharing this because a lot of people will tell me, but I cannot meditate. And
Mm,
then they usually think the cross-legged version where you need to quiet your mind and be
yeah.
still. And they get annoyed and they have all of these thoughts and they're like, oh my God. And just the thought of having to do that is already killing.
Hmm.
So maybe try a couple of times or they don't try at all and they think, oh, meditating is not for me. But
Yeah.
there are indeed so many different ways of meditating. It's even when you close your eyes and just focus on breathing in and breathing out, you're already meditating. And you don't have to be in a cross-legged position. And you indeed have meditative walks or anything that sort of is repetitive. I remember when I was still working as a web designer, that was also a form of meditation where I
Hmm.
was just working and being very much in the zone and feeling very connected and in flow, which is also a form of meditation. So it's, I think, really important for people to discover what their form of meditation is, something that doesn't feel like a have to, because especially if we want to make it a daily practice, it shouldn't be something you have to do,
Yeah.
because most of us get an adversity to having to do
Oh,
something,
oh
and that
yeah.
also doesn't work.
Yeah, you can't tell me what to do.
Exactly.
That's me, at least. One thing that was really fascinating that we saw in additional research, so the research that we looked at after our findings when we interviewed everyone, was we can look at meditation and really tuning into, for the intention of tuning into our intuition or our intuitive abilities, is almost like there's a systematic process we can take, and it's really around activities that help us shift out of those beta brainwaves. So, when we're looking at neuroscience, when we are in our day to day, we're looking at spreadsheets, we're trying to manage, 13 different things, we're taking the kids to school, 75 different to dos. Often that's when our beta brainwaves are engaged. When we start to allow our bodies and our nervous systems to slow down through things like breathing or walking in nature or sitting still in meditation, we start to shift into our alpha and theta brainwaves.
Mhm.
And the more that we can get predominantly in those theta brainwaves, and the more easily we're able to calm down that noise of the day to day
Mhm.
and tune into those subtle whispers of our intuition. So it is really exciting to see this thing that seems like it's very ethereal, right? And it can be. And we want to really honor the sacred traditions that are heavily rooted in this. I cannot express that enough.
Mhm.
When we start to really look at, okay, how can we prioritize things in our day to tune into this more fully, we can really start to think about it through that framework. Okay, what helps me to shift out of that beta brainwave and shift more fully into alpha and then
Mhm.
theta? really helpful, or for me at least.
Yeah.
I nerd out about the research, so it helped me a lot.
I love that. One of the things that really helped me in this was the practice of the Ho'oponopono.
Mm, yeah.
If I caught myself thinking thoughts I didn't want to be thinking, or my thoughts going in a direction I didn't want to be thinking about, and they always teach you you need to control your thinking, but that's easier said than done. It starts first with becoming aware that you're having thoughts that you don't want to have, or that you're constantly repeating things, or you probably recognize it when you're listening to this at home. The things that you think, oh, I should have said that, or I should have done that, or what if I had done this, or what if I had done that, or oh, now I know what to say back to that asshole, but I didn't know it at the moment, or things like that, and those are not productive thoughts. So you want to quiet the mind. And I felt that the Ho'opono ritual of saying, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, also really helped in focusing my thoughts and quieting my mind. And I then did it sort of towards myself, right? I love myself, and I'm sorry that things happened that made me think all of these thoughts that I want to not be thinking, but I love you anyway. And please forgive me that it's sometimes difficult for me to keep my thoughts in check, something along those lines. And it's a simple thing that you keep repeating to yourself whenever I was driving or walking or sitting or waiting or whatever, that allowed me to become the master of my thoughts, the master of what was going on in my head. Because most people know this as, they call it the forgiveness ritual, which in reality it's actually not. I have a video on my channel that's called The Truth About Ho'oponopono. So for anyone interested in that part, look that one up. But it's so much more than just that, and it can be really powerful ritual in gaining control of your inner peace.
Yeah, and heavily rooted in sacred traditions, as I understand it as well. I'm excited that you have a whole video on it. I'll have to go check that out. I think really making, yeah, really celebrating the rich history that it comes from and really honoring that depth and the sacredness of it. That's beautiful. That's so beautiful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, what would you say were some of the key practices and maybe also key insights that you had or started doing as a result of your research?
Yeah. Wow, what a great question. I think some of the key insights, I know, some of the key insights were how overwhelmingly one people, so the format of the interviews followed what's called a grounded theory approach, which is where you're asking people their lived experiences, holding neutral space for them to share any way that is aligned for them,
Mhm,
and then identifying, do any patterns emerge, right? It's a really beautiful way to look at people's lived experiences first, and then see, are there similarities? Are there differences? What do those look like? And then identify, if they align, key patterns from that. And these were all open-ended questions. So it's a little different than a survey, pick one of four options. They were
mhm,
open-ended questions that people can respond any way they wanted.
mhm,
And voluntarily, the majority of people shared they felt very strongly that we are all connected to our intuitive abilities, to our intuitive knowing, to our sixth sense. And the second thing is they wish that there were more resources available for them when they were younger, where
mhm,
they could have really looked at trusting this more, tuning into it more. While they were very grateful to reconnect with it as adults,
mhm.
how lovely it could have been had they never gotten disconnected from it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. That's a big reason behind the why of this channel and the videos I'm
Mhm.
recording. Yeah.
Yeah, we're powerful. I think as humans, as beings, we are so phenomenal. I think we're driven and rooted in a desire to co-create together and to see how we can really create that power.
Mhm,
And an opportunity is for us to let ourselves do that and not get in the way and do this work to connect with that deep wisdom that we're connected to.
mhm,
So everyone sharing, or I would say 98% of people voluntarily share that they felt very strongly that we all are intuitive, should we choose to connect with it.
Mhm,
The second thing that was really powerful was how intuition came in so many different forms. So we
mhm,
talked about this a little bit earlier. And then the third aha was the power of being in a supportive, non religious based community
mhm,
to tune in to their intuition, to tune
mhm,
into that self trust. It worked very much hand in hand. So when we were around others, where we were talking about how we're pulling this into our business, how we're pulling this into our parenting, etc., they
mhm,
were able to really celebrate integrating that, and it
mhm.
aided into them building that self trust. So it happened very much as a cycle.
I love that you're sharing that because that is a big part of the why behind the community that I am building or have already built called Solutions. It is indeed to connect with like-minded kindred spirits where you have a safe space to just completely be yourself and discover the ins and outs of what make you you without fear of judgment or rejection or whatever, where you are all each other's supporters and where you learn to trust in all of these beautiful gifts and abilities that you have. That is a
Yeah.
very, very powerful thing.
It's incredible. Yeah, thank you for leading that. I'm deeply inspired by community as well. In the middle of five kids, so I come from a big family. Well, to me, big family.
Yeah.
And it's been really wonderful being able to help people come together with that. Yeah, and
Mhm.
help people come together in workshops or even small group mentorships and community. It's powerful.
I love that. So, how have things shifted for you on a personal level with regards to intuition and maybe in relation or not to your research?
Oh my goodness. Wow, what a big question. All of it. Yeah, it really was. It was really powerful seeing and having the honor of holding space for so many beautiful conversations
Mhm,
with people. I'll share a quick story around this. In a nutshell, the headline is this work that I've been honored to lead has helped to create a deeper sense of understanding for my own journey,
mhm,
as well as lit a very powerful fire in my belly to share this with as many people that are interested to support their thriving and joy filled quality of life. Which is a really big response with it. But yeah, it really has. It's aided. It took me quite some time to integrate and process all of the data analysis because of
mhm,
such rich information that was shared. I interviewed people from around the world, and I interviewed, doctors, I interviewed CPAs, I interviewed therapists,
mhm,
psychiatrists, people that were in the healing arts, so mediums, psychics, massage therapists, and really a wide range of everybody in between. I interviewed a range of genders, right, and non-genders, and it was really powerful. The cross analysis of it was so consistent for the majority of people with it.
mhm,
So seeing that helped me to embody and deepen my own self-trust even more.
mhm,
And it definitely created quite the pivot in my career with it. And really, I don't even, career is such a word there, is my passion and purpose in
mhm.
life at this juncture. So yeah, it changed quite a bit. And I feel very aligned with it. It's really wonderful. I'm honored.
I love it.
Yeah.
And how would you now say that intuition is guiding you in your everyday life?
Oh, really, I have a daily-ish meditation practice, and for me, I use it, to really tune in. Okay, what's being called to move through me today? How can I do that through being my authentic self? I think it's really been powerful in peeling back those layers of who I thought I was supposed to be.
Mhm.
This really rigid research professor, because I that was the model that I had exhibited. And then we got really lucky to have people like Brene Brown coming out and sharing, like, you can have a really incredible heart and have a really strong impact in the work that you do.
Yeah.
So, I guess in a literal sense, I will quite directly go into my meditation practice for the day with a question in mind, right? Okay, I'm feeling really called to create something that's going to support people. What does that look like? What does that feel like? What's the way in which I distribute that? And
Mhm.
then I just let it flow, and I take very quick notes after my meditation to try to capture it. That's one way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you use deliberate intent, I think, then when you go into your meditation.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can also, I work with my, when I'm sleeping as well. So when we are going to sleep, that liminal space between awake and asleep, that's
Mhm.
when our theta brain waves are engaged most naturally in our day to day. So being right when we're about to fall asleep and right when we're waking up. So what I'll often do is I'll ask myself a question before I go to bed. Um, I'm writing a book. What is the outline meant to be, right? Something as specific as that. And I'll ask it a few times in my mind as I'm falling asleep. And then the first thing I do when I wake up, I'll just write whatever comes to me with the intention around that prompt, that question. Often it'll come in my dreams. I dream, I mean, we all dream every night, but I don't always remember my dreams.
Mhm.
So when I do remember them, that helps with some more information. But often that's another way, another example.
Yes, I
Yeah.
love it. I never remember my dreams.
Mm.
Well, maybe once or twice. Then I wake up in the middle of a dream and then I remember I was dreaming something, but I still don't remember what it was I was dreaming. So
Hmm.
it's always a very difficult or a trying thing. But it is, I think, also why people tell you that the moments right before you fall asleep and the moment right after you wake up are also the perfect moments for your gratitude practice.
Yeah, because you're basically what's happening on a neurological level, biological level, as I understand it, what I've seen is you are very in tune with your subconscious at that point. Your conscious is able to kind of rest. It has your body is calm, everything is allowing you to tap into your subconscious. And as I know we've talked about a little bit, that's where so much of your social conditioning is, your belief system, your limitations, etc. So when we can plug in the questioning or awareness into that really sacred, juicy space, it can be really powerful. So that makes so much sense that a gratitude practice during that phase would be really, really powerful.
Right, because that is also largely in connection to vibration. And the vibration of gratitude is one of the highest vibrations that we can have. And everything that we want in life vibrates at that frequency. So we need a way to amplify that frequency within ourselves so that we become like this magnet that attracts more of that frequency to us. And
Yeah.
by doing that right before we fall asleep, then we sort of take that frequency into our sleep and we're busy with it during our sleep in our subconsciousness, which expands the frequency level, which expands your capacity to attract the things that you want in life.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. What a beautiful practice. And to have that intention with, how do we really amplify this? And how do we put a megaphone to this? Because we're balancing so many things in
Yeah.
our day to day. And I think again, just to go back to the power of this, the conversation that we're having around intuition and the why behind it is the dramatic shifts I heard from people's experience when they talked about their life experience before developing an intentional relationship with their intuition and
Mhm.
their inner knowing compared to after they had developed an intentional relationship with their intuition. They talked about being much less stressed. They talked about having a higher quality of life. They talked about attracting aligned partners or aligned work projects. They
Mm,
talked about feeling more confident in their decision making and therefore their ability to get what they're called to get out into the world in a much more rapid, aligned way. Like the
mm,
list goes on and on and on. And it's powerful. So, what are the tools we can do to one, honor the sacred traditions that are heavily rooted in this, and
mm.
two, bring it into our day to day? So, a gratitude practice right before bed, or really shifting into what is it that you're wanting to call in right before you go to bed. You carry that into that theta brain megaphone.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Oh, I've been really loving our conversation, and I can imagine that everybody that's watching and that's listening has also had their ears open wide and thinking, "Oh, I need to know more about this." So I can also imagine that they would like to know where they can find you or how they can contact you. So where can they find you, Bonnie?
absolutely. Yeah. You can find me like at intuitivebynature.com. That's the same. So it's intuitive underscore by underscore nature on Instagram and Facebook. And one thing that's coming up, if you're curious about diving deeper into the research, I will be launching a 6 episode podcast series talking about the key findings within that research project. So you can find all that information on intuitivebynature.com, and we'd love to have you follow along.
That is so awesome. So don't worry if you didn't quite catch it or you don't know how to write it. I will make sure that the links that Bonnie talked about are included in the show notes, usually below this video or maybe to the sides or up, depending on what platform you're catching this upon. And I would also love it if you could share with us your biggest insight in the comments below this video. After listening to this interview, what is the biggest insight or the biggest takeaway that you've gotten after listening to our talk? That would be awesome. And if you thought this was really valuable, it would also be great if you could share this episode with your tribe, because you don't know who you know that might really need to listen to this episode here today. And you would be doing them a great service by sharing it. So thank you. And before we leave, Bunny, is there a final tip or a final message or something that you would like to give to someone who is still in that struggling or maybe connecting to your intuition phase?
Oh man, what a great question. Yeah, two things are popping in. And one is to keep the journey of really tuning in and trusting what feels aligned for you deep in your heart, deep in your knowing. Allow yourself to get still, take a few deep breaths into your heart, and then see what decision you want to make from there. Because you're powerful. We are powerful. And two, know that we are far from alone in these beautiful abilities and connections. So if you want to reach out, I do virtual coffees, would love to chat more. I'm also creating an online community where we're getting together talking about these things. So know you're not alone and keep trusting yourself. It's really powerful.
Yes, that is a beautiful message to end this episode with. You are not alone, and trust in yourself and trust in the process. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, viewers, listeners, for being here and for listening to our talk. And thank you so much, Bonnie, for both your research and your willingness to come and talk and share about it here today on this show.
Oh, absolutely. And also, we're allowed to have a really great time with this. Give yourself permission to have a darn good time with this. So, thank you so much for having me. It's been a joy.
Yes, it has been a real pleasure. So for now, I have nothing else to say to all of you than have a really great rest of your day and tune in next week when I will be talking to my next guest about another wonderful topic. For right now, have a great rest of your day and talk to you soon.
Bye.